right. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. How was your week?
Can't hear you.
I didn't hear anything. Okay, so hopefully that means it was a good week. And so hopefully doing well, and look forward to seeing you soon. Praying for you, and hope you had a great week.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And so how was your week?
Like the funny part
Yes.
of my week?
Yeah, so how was your week?
Well, since you asked, because you've heard me complain about it this week, I know we have serious things going on, but I got to give you some lighthearted seriousness on my part. I found this week, I think I have at least a dozen gray hairs. And I was like,
Baker's dozen.
I literally, I'm not going to lie, people, I yelled like, what? So that was rough. My second part is I stepped on the scale finally. I did it.
Mm-hmm.
You heard me, didn't you? People, I've gained 6 pounds in like 7 weeks. And let me tell you, when you wash your jeans and you try to put them on for the first time, like I did before doing this, you know, let's just say you might have to do one extra jump to get them up. That's all I'm saying. So that has been my week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's other things that we've done and been going on.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about, but I'm just saying that has been rough.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, we've had a good week. So Pastor, I know you've been excited because he's literally asked the kids, done some skip dancing of excitement. So you want to tell them what you were skip dancing over?
Yeah, you saw if you didn't get a chance to, I sent an update video via text message. And so if you didn't get a chance to watch that, go back and check your text message and watch that. But I'm excited about all the things. I know it's not an ideal situation, but this time has given us an opportunity to make some progress on a lot of different projects that are going on. And so I'm glad to see some of these things happening and some improvements and some needed upgrades taking place during this time. And so just take a look at that, and I'm excited about those things. Looking forward to a time when we can get back together, and we sure appreciate your involvement in that. And mostly a lot of churches during this time frame are operating on about a 50 or 60% budget right now because of decreased giving. And I sent a postcard out a while back, I think, or a note to let you know that I sincerely appreciate our church is beating the norm and way above average. And the fact that we are awesome. Hitting budget every single week. And so your faithfulness and generosity, your giving allows us to continue everything that we do at church here and reaching out into our community. And so we're having a great opportunity there with our food bank as well. Yes,
food bank has been going well. There are a lot of families that reach out every week, and you're a part of that. Your faithful giving, and then of course those who donate extra for food bank is put to good use to supplement it. So the food bank is going really well. So this upcoming week, just want to let you know, we're going to be having our big distribution, which that's the once a month where we get from Midwest. And so that is going to be bigger than normal. So I think we've got a routine now. I try to have the list typed out by Tuesday night. And so late Tuesday night to Wednesday morning, it will be uploaded to our Facebook page and also to our church website. And then you sign up for a time, and then there's a link that you can go to for your food list and submit that. So anyway, that is working out. So expect that Tuesday night, Wednesday night, or Wednesday morning, and then we will have food bank times on Thursday and Friday scheduled.
Okay, so Thursday and Friday, and so be watching for that on Wednesday to sign up for it. And then the last thing here, or one get close to the last thing.
Yeah, we're coming.
We're so proud of our graduates in Danvers. I know those that go to Olympia High School and they're graduating. A lot of that was disrupted because of everything that's going on, and so. We've started a scholarship fund for them. We mentioned that last week. And so Mark's going to give you an update on that. You'll be getting some details through social media and through the mail this week. The account's all set up and ready to receive funds. And we've already made some donations to that. And so everything's ready to go.
Yeah, so you will get something like this. I know it's backwards on it. You all, it's not, it's normal. Okay, it looks backwards to me. Y'all, you know I'm not tech, right? He's the tech one. So you'll get a postcard and it will have information on the back of it and how to be a part of loving on our Danvers Olympia seniors. So basically you can drop it off at the bank and through the drive-through during business hours or at the night drop. You can mail your donation to the bank and just put the Danvers Scholarship Fund. You can also, if you have online bill paying, you can do that. And lastly, you can send to Danvers Baptist Church either by mail and just put Attention Scholarship Fund or through online giving, and there's a drop down button that you can press where it goes right to that. So be prepared to see this and to get more information both on our social media and in the mail.
Yep. And so we just want to show our appreciation and our support of them during this time. Last thing here, and that is be praying for our church family and church members. This week has been very difficult for many families. There's some very serious prayer requests that have come across our desk this week, and many of them will be on our weekly prayer list that will go out via email this week. So be paying attention for that, and be praying for our church members. Several serious things come about this week, and so just be praying for them, praying for each other, and hope you have a wonderful Sunday. And thank you so much for being faithful like you are. That shows your dedication to the Lord, and I appreciate that.
We love you guys, and as normal, we are praying for you, and we're just a phone call away. You all have a wonderful week, and know that you are loved and prayed for immensely.
All right. Goodbye.
Have a great week.
small face did I drink the sunlight in and look on losing as a win? Did I take the highest road? Did I repay the debt I owed? Search me now, I pray, and wash my every sin away. Before the purple sunset skies, before the carpe diem dies, before I close my eyes to sleep and pray, dear Lord, my soul to keep, before I reach the end of day, I've got to know I've walked your way, before the darkness shades the ground, before the sun goes down. Did I keep my word today and mean the things you heard me say? Did I make sincere amends with those I wronged, my kin and friends? Did I seek to be more real and verbalize the things I feel? Did I think on what is good and help my brother when I could? Before the purple sunset skies, before the carpe diem dies, before I close my eyes to sleep and pray, dear Lord, my soul to keep, before I reach the end of day, I've got to know I've walked your way, before the darkness shades the ground, before the sun goes down. As I reflect, I must confess that I might not have passed some test, and I fell short in everything, for my poor flesh is limiting, and I regret my whole life through I did not spend much time with you. But if there's time and one more breath and one more hour of daylight left, before the purple sunset skies, before the carpe diem dies, before I close my eyes to sleep and pray, dear Lord, my soul to keep, before I reach the end of day, I've got to know I've walked your way, before the darkness shades the ground, before the sun goes down. Before the sun goes down.
Good morning. Good to see you. You can see me. I can't see you right now. I'm just looking at this camera and can't wait to get rid of looking at this camera lens every week and get back to looking at your face and seeing you in person. Just be praying for that and be patient as we go and look for things to have joy about. Reach out to others and be a help to those around you during this time. As you know, we've been going through the passage where Jesus walks on the water after he feeds the 5,000, and the disciples ended up in a storm, and we're going to be continuing that on this morning. If you would, take your Bibles and go to Matthew chapter 14, and we're continuing on with our series here, Understanding the Storms of Life. Storms come, we can't stop it. It will happen, it will take place, and in your life, in my life, there's things that come into our life that are big and out of control. They sometimes disrupt us, they hurt us. It looks like we're trapped, and yet Christ is right there with us as we see in this storm here. Matthew chapter 14 and verse 22, and let's begin reading. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship, and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth, thou art the Son of God. And so this morning I want to take this passage and I want to speak to you on this topic, faith or fear. In this series about understanding the storm, it came out of the idea of helping people during difficult times. And I was looking at how the disciples handled this, how they responded to this, and some of the things that they were facing. And the goal here is to better understand the storm, better understand the circumstances around the storm, better understand how the disciples handled it and how the disciples dealt with it, so that we might be more prepared to deal with those difficult things that show up in our life unannounced. And it happens to all of us. And right now there is certainly something that came into the lives of our people around the world, around our country, around our community. We didn't ask for any of this, and yet we have to deal with it on a daily basis. So how do we handle that? How do we respond to that? And so I want you to notice that as Jesus was coming upon them, I want you to look at a couple more verses here in the account that is recorded in the book of Mark of this very situation. A couple more verses here. Mark chapter 6 and verse 48. And when he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them, and about the fourth watch of the night he cometh unto them, walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. So Jesus leaves and he begins to walk and he begins to act as though he would pass by them. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit and cried out. And here we see that the disciples, as Jesus was making his way closer to the boat, he kind of angled himself evidently like he would just walk by them, but instead they recognized there was somebody out there. They saw him, thought it was a spirit, and began to cry out in fear. They did not know what to make of it. And so I want to just bring up a couple of things today that we see the disciples going through during this storm. The first one is this: storms can be a place of fear. Now, I want you to understand something. Just to be fair, if it was me in the middle of the ocean, middle of the sea, and a big storm came up, and I was going through all these things, and it was dark, and it was stormy, and it was windy, and it was noisy, and the waves were crashing into the boat, and there was a likelihood that maybe this ship would not survive the storm. And then all of a sudden, I saw a shadowy figure making its way across the water, walking on the water. I would be afraid also, okay? Just to be fair, I'm not picking on the disciples here because they were afraid and had good reason to be afraid.
But when you're in a stressful situation, oftentimes your senses are so hyper in tune to things that we see things, and things make us jump and things make us move. And if you've ever been in a situation where maybe it was dark or quiet and creepy and you hear a noise, you instantly pick up on that. Growing up in Alaska, many times we have to be outside when it's cold, quiet, and dark. And your ears are attentive to every little thing that moves, all right? And so you'd be walking through the woods. My grandparents lived quite a ways away from us, but we went to their house through the woods. We could go out to the main road, but we lived back in a wooded area, and we would just made a trail between our house and my grandparents' house. And sometimes in the evening or at night in the winter, we would go over there. And if I had to go by myself, I'd take the flashlight and start walking through the woods. And it was cold, it was dark, and your ears would pick up every little noise. And you'd hear a crack, and you'd wonder what it was. You couldn't see. And so I understand that sometimes in a stressful, fearful situation, your senses are heightened, and every little thing sounds like a big situation. And sometimes we get into like a knee-jerk reaction, and we see something, and we hear something, and we react. And the idea is sometimes we get very afraid of what's going on. The disciples here, they cried out because they were afraid. They saw this shadowy figure. And it's sometimes in a situation like this that we end up reacting very quickly when we should take time to respond or to act appropriate to what is going on. In Mark chapter 4, what we find here is that Jesus is in a storm with the disciples. This wasn't the first time that they were in a storm. Okay, let me go through that account, and you'll see the verses as we go through it. Mark chapter 4 and verse number 35. In this instance, Jesus was already in the boat with them. And the same day, when the even was come, he saith unto them, Let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent the multitude away, they took him, even as he was in the ship, and there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. So this boat was out there, and the waves were crashing in so much so that it began to fill the boat up with water. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? After calming the storm, and after calming the sea, and after facing the accusation that he didn't care about them, Jesus stood up and he addressed something with the disciples that were in the boat there. He addressed two things. He addressed the matter of fear, and he addressed the matter of faith. And he said, Why are you being so afraid? Okay, why are you so afraid? I'm here with you. We're headed to a certain place. I know a storm came up. Why are you so afraid? Why is your faith so small? Why do you have little faith? These are the same two things that these disciples were facing in this new storm. When Jesus came there and he got closer to them, they were afraid and they had little faith. The same two things. Why? Because fear is natural when we're in a situation that we've never faced before. When we're in a situation that looks dangerous, that looks like it could be very hurtful and harmful to us, the natural thing is to be afraid. And so he addressed something that was very natural for them, and that was fear. Why are you fearful? The next thing he addressed was the matter of faith. Why? Because faith is not nearly as natural as fear is. And so he's trying to get them and divert their attention from the fearful aspect of what's going on into a matter of faith that they can put their trust into him. So being in the storm is something that you cannot help. You cannot stop it from happening. But in the storm, let me encourage you to be learning what you can about fear and about faith. The disciples faced this situation at least twice here, and Christ was trying to get something across to them, that when your faith is diminished, the fear begins to rise. And when the fear is diminished, it's because faith begins to rise. And so the idea is they're relational, but inversely proportional. As one goes up, the other goes down. And so the idea here is it faith or fear that is guiding your decision process? Is it faith or fear that's guiding your emotional contentment right now? Is it because I'm afraid, or is it because I have faith that Christ will take care of things in the future? Lack of faith can usher in an inordinate amount of fear. An overwhelming fear is often an indication of a lack of faith or a lack of trust. They're connected together. And so faith and fear, when the storm comes, which one are you going to allow to be the dominant idea or the dominant thought in your life? And here the disciples, Christ had to address it to them. Hey, wait a second. Why are you so afraid? You need to have more faith. The next thing that we see about storms here, storms can be a place of fear. They certainly can. Not diminishing the fear. It's a natural thing. The idea is let's grow our trust in Him. The next thing is this: storms allow us to experience miracles. Storms allow us to experience miracles. In verse 28 in Matthew 14, we read it. Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And Christ said, yeah, come on out here. And Peter got out of the boat and he began to walk upon the water. There are only 2 documented cases of people walking on water: Jesus and Peter. I'm not one of them. You're not one of them. And so the idea here is there's 2 folks, Jesus Christ, of course, walking on water, but Peter, one person, walking on water. What an amazing miracle. What an amazing miracle. Here's the problem. In order for Peter to have the opportunity to walk on the water, there had to be a need for him to do so. And Jesus came walking out on these stormy seas, out there to his disciples. And the whole point of this is the reason that there was a miracle that took place is because they were in a position that they needed a miracle to take place. If there was no need for a miracle, then there was no need for anything that was supernatural. And if it wasn't a miracle and wasn't supernatural, then it was nothing special. In order for you to have a miracle, you need to be in a position where a miracle is needed. Listen to some of these. In order for a miracle of giving sight to the blind, the person first needed to be blind. In order to make the lame walk again, there must have been someone who was crippled. In order to have the miracle of raising someone from the dead, they first had to have died. In order to part the Red Sea, you must be first surrounded by mountains and the Egyptians. In order to catch a miracle amount of fish, you must first go all night without catching anything. In order to have the prison doors open wide, you must first have been caught and placed in prison in the first place. In order to have your hand healed, it had to be withered first. In order for Jesus to have healed the lady with the issue of blood, she had to have it for 12 years to begin with. In order for 2 mites to be considered the greatest gift of all, you first must be down to only 2 mites. In order for your ear to be healed, you must have first had it cut off by a sword. In order for him to calm the wind and the waves and the storm, there first had to be a violent storm. In order for Peter to walk on the waters and walk on these boisterous waves, there first had to be a violent storm. Here's the idea. In order for you to be in a position to garner a miracle and to see a miracle, you have to be in a position where it takes something above and beyond and something that is miraculous and supernatural. You have to be in a position where there appears to be no hope. So we all want to see miracles. We all enjoy reading about miracles and hearing miracles. We all want to experience miracles. But the point is, you have to be in a position where there's absolutely no rational hope for there to be a miracle in the first place. And so when you're in a position like that, understand that that is an opportunity for you to experience a miracle. The dilemma is we do not want problems. It's hard to face the problems that lead to miracles. Because if there was no difficult problem, there would be no need for the miracle. And we want that miracle. We have to understand that in order to get the miracle, you have to be in a position where there's a very difficult problem. And so I can only speak about things that I've experienced and personally when it comes to this idea. But I have seen things that I would consider to be miraculous. And there's been instances, and some of these stories many of you have already heard. One time I was driving our car, and I was going through an intersection. Got in the middle of a four-way intersection, 4-lane intersection, and the car just quit right in the middle. And I needed a miracle, right? I didn't know what was wrong with it. I had a friend with me. We got out and opened up the hood. We tried to start it, wouldn't start. Nothing. Opened the hood, looked around, didn't know what I was looking at. shut the hood again. Said, I hope this works out. And so we looked at each other and we said, I don't know. Let's pray for a miracle. And so we stood there in the middle of a 4-lane intersection and prayed. And then we prayed that the car would start. We looked at each other and said, let's try it. And we hopped in the car, turned the key, it started up, and we got through the intersection. For me, that was miraculous. It wasn't working. We prayed, and it began to work. There were many times in our early married life that where we didn't have enough food in the shelves, and my wife put up with a lot of things when we first got married, a lot of problems, and that probably shouldn't have taken place, but we were in that position and made some decisions that probably led to these things, but we didn't have a lot of groceries, and so we're looking at the cupboards, empty, and a knock at the door, and we go to the door, nobody there, and yet bags full of groceries and fresh things and frozen things and cold things. Somebody in particular went and purchased food, brought it to our house, and dropped it off at our doorstep. Miraculous. We were in need, praying, and God supplied. The idea here is in order to have a miracle, you have to be in a position where you need miraculous intervention. Don't fear the difficult times in life. Don't fear the times where it seems like there's no hope. Why? Because that's just the kind of place that Jesus likes to show up. That's just the kind of place where God likes to come in and supply the needs when you see that there is no hope. When you are looking at it with eyes of hopelessness, Christ can come in and deliver. The next thing is this: storms can be a place that bring you close to God. We were reading in Matthew 14 there, verse 30 and 31. It says, but when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? This is an amazing situation. I'm going to kind of point out what seems like a contradiction in life. It's natural, it's normal, it's typical to respond to a storm, to respond to a storm and think that Jesus is nowhere near you. When they were out in the middle of the sea, they could not see Christ, but Christ could see them. It would be natural for them to look around and not be able to see him and think, he's not around. But that somehow, that Jesus is not close is a very wrong kind of thinking, because here's the idea. You have the God of the universe that created you, created this world, loves you, and to think that he's not aware of your situation is not something that would take place. Obviously, he knows everything about us, right? But we get in a position where we can't see him, or we can't see his hand, or we can't see his movement, and we think he doesn't care, he's not near us. But God, that sacrificed his only son to die on a cross for you, to pay a debt that you owed, to forgive you, to make you one of his children, for him to just allow you to flounder doesn't make sense. Of course he's aware of your situation. And to think that he does not care is an attack on him, in such that the disciples, when they were in the sea and they came to Jesus that was sleeping, they said, why don't you care about us? You're going to let us die in this ocean. Why don't you care? That was a very odd accusation towards Christ, that he did not care. Of course he cares. They just didn't see the big picture. And so often when we find ourselves in a difficult position, we often think that Jesus or God is further away from us than he really is. He's very, very close to us. And so instead of being far, far away, but instead of thinking that he is so far away from us in a storm, we need to allow the storm to draw us closer to him. Here's a couple of thoughts. When I see folks, and when I personally am in difficult situations, here's a couple of things that I end up thinking. And sometimes I have to readjust and reassess the situation and encourage people maybe to rethink what's going on. The first thing that usually happens is this: when the storm comes, it's easy to get angry. It's easy to get angry with God. Sometimes we ask things like, why don't you care? Why did you allow this? Why won't you fix this? Why aren't you close to me? Why don't you do what I need you to do? And after we look at it for a while and we think about these things, it's easy sometimes for us to get worked up, to get upset, and to get angry with God and say, why didn't you do this? I've tried to be a good person. I've tried to do things for you. Now I need something that you could do for me. Why are you doing this? And sometimes when we see very difficult situations, it becomes easy to blame God. It becomes easy to be upset with God. It becomes easy to be angry with God. That is a natural reaction in many cases. It is. But we don't have to stay there. Sometimes when the storm comes, we get past that point and we begin to accept it. We begin to accept the fact that God has allowed this into our life. And so we try to see the good, and we try to have some understanding. We try to see some spiritual understanding about what's going on in life. And as the storm begins to linger, as those problems begin to stay, another problem arises, another difficulty arises. So maybe we get through that part where we feel angry about it, and then we get to the part where we accept it, where we say, okay, God has allowed this, and we try to make the best of this situation. But then day after day and month after month and year after year, it just goes on and on and on, and it seems like nothing ever changes. And we begin to grow weary. And so we get to the position with, why is God not doing anything? I'm accepting this. Now, why isn't anything progressing? I'm having patience. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to look for the good. And so what happens? We get a diagnosis of cancer, but a cure never comes. A divorce happens, but there's never a reconciliation. Maybe a layoff happens, but there's no job prospects. And as time progresses, we get weary and weary and weary. We become less optimistic, more pessimistic, and we begin to drift away from God. In both of these cases, we get to the point where we're not so happy about the storm. Let me encourage you, don't get weary in the difficult times. Don't get weary in the difficult times. I know that's easy to say and so hard to do. I understand that. I understand how difficult it is not to be weary when you're right in the middle of it. I understand how easy it is to just want to throw in the towel and just to give up. I get that. It's difficult to just stay faithful in the midst of these difficulties. So what can you do? Well, something you can do here is don't focus on the what. The what is that storm, and guess what? It can always get worse. That storm could get worse. Whatever the situation is, it could get a lot worse. There could always be that one more thing. You ever been there, right? Well, I can't handle one more thing, and then one more thing shows up. I can't handle one more thing, and one more thing shows up. The idea is don't focus on the what, because the what can always get worse. Don't focus on the when. Sometimes we put God in a time frame. I want this done by this time. I need this done by this time. And we focus on the when, and instead of focusing on other things. We always want, this is not a good time. This is a horrible time. I can't believe it's happening right now. This is a really bad time for this to take place. The truth is, there's never a good time for a storm, right? Has there ever a really good time for a disruption to come into your life? Is there ever really a good time? Of course not. And so we focus on the timing of it mainly, and that gets us on a wrong focus. We're focusing on the what, then we're focusing on the when. Let me encourage you not to focus on the why. Why is this happening? Sometimes we misunderstand the why. Sometimes we misinterpret the why. The why is not nearly as important as some other things we're going to get to, but sometimes we focus on the why. And it's a natural question, and it's a question that you can ask God. Why is this happening? Guess what? He can handle any question you have for him. He can handle it. And so ask him, that's fine. Just understand that you may not always get the answer. You may not always understand. You may not always get the response that you're wanting. You may not always get the understanding. And so we ask God, why is this happening? What's going on? And sometimes we misinterpret the why. Job is a great example of not understanding the why. He did not know what was going on behind the scenes. He was just seeing what was coming out in front of him, and he had the question of why. Don't focus on the where. It is usually not where is the issue, but, where is this happening? The answer is, well, it's happening here, so I think we should go someplace else. It's this house we need to move. It's this state we need to move. It's this place we need to move. It's this job I need to move. It's not always the where. It can be, but it's not always the where. And if we focus so much on the where, we might lose the bigger picture. And so solution is found in what? The solution is found in dealing with a storm by focusing on the who. Who is there? The answer is Jesus Christ. Focus on building that relationship with Christ. The Bible says if we draw close to Him, He draws close to us. The Bible says that He will never leave us and never forsake us. And so the idea is you need to focus on the who. When Peter stepped out of that boat and he began to walk on the water, his focus was on the who. And as he was doing that, it didn't matter how bad the storm was because he was focusing on the who. When he began to focus on the where and the when and the how and all the things that were going on around him, then he began to sink. When he was focused on the who, things were going much better for him. Did it stop the storm? Nope. Did it stop the waves? Nope. Did it stop the wind? Nope. Did it stop the water from going into the boat? No, it didn't. But his focus was changed, and he was focusing on the who, and Christ was right there with him. What the goal is to allow this time to be drawing you closer to God, not pushing you further away. Not focusing on why God is allowing it or why He's not doing certain things, but rather, I want to build a closer personal relationship with Him. Allow this time for you to focus upon the who. Why? He's never left you. Maybe you feel like He has. Maybe you feel like He's forgotten your past and He forgot you in the past and has left you behind. Maybe you feel forsaken. Maybe you think He doesn't care. I can assure you that He is there and that He cares. Of all the disciples that were in the boat, Peter was the only one that temporarily overcame his fear enough to step out on the water with faith. Nobody else did, but Peter is the one that did that, and he did it. He asked for it. He said, I'm going to overcome this thing. I'm going to have faith. I'm going to step out by faith and leave this other stuff behind. So close was Peter to Jesus that when he began to sink, all Jesus had to do was reach out his hand. That is how close Peter was. How close did Peter get from the boat to Jesus? He got quite a ways because when he started to sink, he was only this far away from Jesus, only an arm stretch away. That's how close that he made it. I would rather get out of the boat and do my best to get as close as possible to Christ because the closer I am to Him, the closer He is to me during those difficult times. The storms offer us a unique opportunity to get really, really close to Jesus. In Mark chapter 6, the last thing this morning, Mark chapter 6 and verse 51, in this account of the story, we're going to read a couple more verses, says this, "And when He went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure and wondered, for they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened." Seems like a very interesting thing to say about the disciples, that when He got in the boat, they were all amazed that the wind stopped. They were all amazed that He walked on the water. They were all amazed that Peter was rescued by Christ and that he walked on the water. They were all amazed that Jesus left the shore and made it out to them. They were all amazed and they were wondering and they had eyes of amazement. And He got in the boat, and the Bible says that they were really, really shocked and surprised at all that Jesus did because their heart was a little hard, because they were not considering and they were not thinking about the miracle of the loaves, the miracle that just took place shortly before this situation where Jesus fed the 5,000. The next thing is this: storms can harden the heart if you're not careful. If you're not careful, the storms can harden your heart. This last point this morning is really kind of a warning, just to say, don't allow the storms to allow your heart to become hardened and callous towards God. Even the disciples, the closest ones to Christ, allowed this difficulty to allow their heart to become not so open to Christ, and they were very cynical about what was going on. The disciples were not considering the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. And so I just want you to, let's think about that feeding of the 5,000 for a minute and think about what was going on, okay? First of all, when I look at the feeding of the 5,000, I see this. I see that Jesus can do what man cannot do. As they were sitting there, how are we going to feed all of these people? How can we feed all of these people? And they came up with ideas. Even if we had enough money, we'd have to go to town. We probably couldn't buy enough stuff, and we don't have enough money. How are we going to feed the 5,000? I know, we'll just send them away and let them feed themselves. And Jesus said, no, what do we got? Let's just feed them. When our hearts sometimes begin to harden because we fail to see that Jesus can do things in our lives that we cannot do. We're not in control of everything that goes on in our life. We're not the ones that decide everything that happens in our life. We can do many things and we can attempt many things, but really, Christ can do things that we cannot do. The more that we depend upon ourselves to get things done, the harder it is for Christ to get things done in our life. And I've been there. I just want to head out there and do my thing and do the best that I can, and I act like it all depends on me, but it doesn't. It also depends on me allowing Christ to work in my life. They could not overcome the storm themselves, and so Jesus had to come and overcome it for them. And so when he calmed the storm, they said, wow, that's amazing. They just watched him take bread and fish and break it and multiply it to feed thousands of people with a bunch of leftovers. They just saw that miracle, and now they're amazed and wondered that Christ could calm a storm. Their heart was becoming a little hard. The second thing that we see in the miracle of the loaf is this, that Jesus can take a little and turn it into much. The typical person wants more and they want better things. And God has often allows us to have a little in life in certain areas so that we understand that he's the one that can turn it into much. Why? We need him. We need him to multiply things in our life. When it comes to provisions, we always want more. We want more of a house, right? We want a bigger house. We want more cars. We want more clothes. We want more money and savings. We want more security. And here's the illusion. Here's the false sense that comes with all those things. It creates a false sense of security because we're trusting those things to provide us that security instead of trusting Christ to provide us that security. And so the problem with a lot of possessions, the problems with much, is the fact that we tend to rely upon them instead of relying upon God. All of those things can be gone in just a moment, in just an instant. You understand that, and you know that from a practical point. But we still like to have that extra. We like to have those, more than enough so that we feel like we have security going forward. The point is that Jesus is the one that provides security, not those things. So Jesus is the one that provides that, and he can take a little and turn it into a lot when it comes to faith. In fact, he even tells us that with faith. It doesn't take a lot. He says the mustard seed, this little tiny baby little seed, is all the faith that we need because he can take a little and turn it into a lot. We don't need a whole lot. We need him more than we need things. And so he can take a small lunch, feed thousands of people, and he can multiply things in your life as well. What's the next thing that we learn about the feeding of the 5,000? The feeding of the 5,000 taught us that Jesus can meet the needs that you have. The Lord knew how to meet the need of these 5,000 people. The disciples didn't know. They were coming up with all kinds of ideas. How can we feed them? How can we take care of them? How can we help them? And yet Christ was calm. He knew exactly how he was going to meet the needs of those people. Some said, turn them away. They'll figure it out. Some said it would take too much money. Some said we don't have enough food. But Jesus already knew what he was going to do, and he knew the right way to handle it. Here's the idea. It doesn't matter what the storm looks like. Christ knows how to meet your needs. It doesn't matter how hopeless it looks. Christ knows how to meet your needs. It doesn't matter how little you actually have. Christ knows how to take that and meet your needs. Guess what? He knows how to do it. That's a lesson that they should have learned at the storm, is that Christ knows how to meet their needs. What's the last lesson that we see from the storm? Because remember, he got in the boat, calmed everything down, and their hearts were a little bit hard because they did not consider the lessons they should have learned by watching Jesus feed the 5,000. What's another lesson? Another lesson is this: Jesus can bless you with more than is required. Ain't that the truth? So after the bread and the fish were passed out, They took this small amount, Jesus blessed it, he broke it, he gave to the disciples gave to the people, and when they got all done, they had all these leftovers. They sent the disciples out with baskets. Each of the 12 disciples went out with a basket, and they came back to him with 12 baskets full of leftovers. When Jesus was invited to get involved, guess what? He had more than enough to spare. Picture this. The disciples were witnessing the feeding of the 5,000. They were not only witnesses of it, they were actively participating in it. They were watching Christ multiply it. They were taking it to the people. They were picking up all the leftovers. They were active participants in this miracle. And in this miracle, but they did not consider the lesson that they learned, and that is that Jesus is the one that needs. They were the ones that had a need at this time, and they could not see that Christ could overcome that. So what did he say to them? Oh, you have a little faith. Why are you doubting? I asked you to go over here. Why are you doubting? I asked the people to sit down so I could feed them, and I fed them. I asked you to go over here. I'm going to meet you on the other side. I told you I was going to meet you over there. I was going to meet you. And so why are you having a little faith? You're facing some difficulties. I understand that. And when he calmed it, they did not connect the two. You didn't consider the miracle of the loaves. Did you forget the miracles of the past? Did you forget the lessons that you learned? Did you forget the miracles that you read in scriptures? Here's the idea. Don't forget those things. Don't forget that God can do more than you can do. Don't forget that God can do more than man can do. Don't forget that God can give you more than you ever ask, more than you ever want, more than you ever desire. He can give above and beyond what is needed and required. Don't forget that a little can be turned into much. Don't forget that God can meet every single need that you have. Don't forget that God is there for you. Don't fall into the lie that, well, he does it for other people, but he won't do it for me. Listen, he's here to do it for you too. And so you might be facing a storm right now. You might be in the middle of the storm. How do you know that Christ isn't on the shore watching you and he's about ready to walk? How do you know that he's just beyond that fog, just beyond those clouds, and you just quite can't see his shadowy figure walking closer towards you? How do you know he's not almost right there? Just because you can't see him doesn't mean he's not there, doesn't mean that he doesn't care. And so, yes, there's a storm going on. There's a problem going on. There's a difficulty going on in your life. But he can meet the need. Pharaoh, in the Old Testament, when God was allowing Moses to take his people from slavery in Egypt, the Bible kept saying over and over that Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He would witness a miracle. He would almost change, and then he would harden his heart. The idea here is he witnessed miracle after miracle after miracle, and yet instead of being moved by those things, he allowed it to harden his heart. The idea here is even in a storm, keep your heart tender and open to what God has for you. So what does that mean? It means that when you face a storm, try to direct yourself towards an initial reaction of faith instead of fear. So your initial reaction, it might be fear, but what's your final reaction? Let it be faith. Yes, storms are fearful. Yes, storms can harden your heart. They can make you cynical. Yes, storms can allow you to see a lot of negative, but storms can also allow you to see miracles take place, and storms can also allow you to be closer to God. So what will it be this morning? Are you going to allow faith to prevail? Are you going to allow fear to prevail? Hey, we all have both of those. But which one tips the balance? Are you fearful this morning? Are you afraid about the future? Are you afraid about your future? Listen, if you are, you're not alone. Many are afraid about what's going to take place in the future. You're not alone in that. But consider putting your trust, consider putting your faith in Jesus Christ, because he is the one that can provide security. Jesus Christ, God's only Son. He was born miraculously of a virgin. He lived a sinless life. He was killed, crucified on a cross. They buried him, and 3 days later, he rose again. Why did he do that? To forgive you and to be your Savior. Would you call out to him this morning? Would you ask him to forgive your sin? Would you ask him to be your Savior? Would you say, God, I don't know how to handle all this, but I'd rather trust you and to have you with me. Would you do that this morning? Would you take that step of faith towards Him, would you overcome that fear? Let's pray together. Jesus, I pray that you'll watch over us. Lord, even in this time when fear is on the rise, Lord, I pray that you help us to have faith in you. Watch over us this morning. Help us, encourage us, and strengthen us. And allow us to have the faith to know that you're near and the trust to know that you'll take care of us. We love you. We trust you. And we ask these things in your name. Amen. I'm so glad that you spent time with us this morning, and I just can't wait until we get back together again. And so don't forget to check our website often, and check there for food bank updates and whatever else you might need. There's some forms on there that you can fill out to contact us with prayer requests and different things. And so take time to go there, watch out for us, share with other people, contact them, and see if anyone else has needs or maybe something you can do to help. And be praying that we can meet together soon. I hope you have a great Sunday, and we'll see you next time.